Let's now bring in Advocate Paul Hoffman, Director and Project Lead at Accountability Now. He joins us via video link as we preview the National Assembly's first sitting in the 7th administration. Good afternoon to you, Advocate Hoffman, and thank you so much for your time. So tomorrow's sitting is then, in a sense, historic for South Africa. I mean, just given the fact that the last time members of Parliament elected a president was for the late former President Nelson Mandela. Just take us through what this process entails and the significance of what we will be witnessing tomorrow as of 10 in the morning.
Yes, it certainly is, Unati. Good afternoon, and good afternoon to your viewers as well. It certainly is different to anything that we've had before, in this sense that no single party commands a majority of the votes in the National Assembly. So it's going to be interesting if there is not already an agreement between the majority of the party representatives in Parliament as to who should be the next president. It seems from the reports and the coverage in the last 24 hours that it is likely that a government of national unity will be formed, and that really amounts to a grand coalition or an agreement to work for national unity between enough parties to reach agreement on who the next president should be. And the president's job then is to create a cabinet, and there may be even a pre-existing agreement as to who should be members of that cabinet. And then there may also be agreement as to who should be Speaker and Deputy Speaker, an agreement that is reached between those parties that are prepared to participate in and have agreed to the basis of a government of national unity. It's also possible that all of the detail of a government of national unity will not have been worked out in time for the elections that are held tomorrow, in which event it is hoped by the people of South Africa that the parties will at least have worked out what needs to be done about the business of the House tomorrow, which is, as the Secretary of Parliament has just told your viewers, the election of a Deputy Speaker, and a President for the 7th Parliament of the Republic of South Africa. Now, it is a new ball game, and it looks as if the politicians have behaved sensibly and maturely, and that we will be able in the next Parliament to get back to implementing constitutional principles and values.
Yeah, Advocate,
across party lines.
I agree. So, Advocate, Hoffman, just as a reference to that historic statement I made, of course, I'm talking about following, the national and provincial election, because we know, of course, we saw how Cyril Ramaphosa was elected by the National Assembly in 2018 after the resignation of, the former President Jacob Zuma. But just talk to us about,
Well, it's happened every time.
Yeah. What happens,
every time there's an election of a president. I'll let
unless,
you
Yes, of course. Just given the fact that this was not the majority, won by the ANC, of course. But what happens to the MK party members now who have indicated that they will not be attending tomorrow? So essentially, they will not be sworn in. It is the first sitting. The National Assembly will have a quorum for the election processes to resume. But what does this mean for the MK party?
It seems to me that it is simply an empty gesture, because there's nothing that they're going to achieve by it. And if they stay away for 15 sessions, then they will lose their places in Parliament. Well, they haven't said they're going to stay away for 15 sessions. So I think that all that they are really doing is adopting a posture to make their unhappiness with the election known. But it's not going to stop anything. It's not going to achieve any derailment of the process, because if there are only 134 members of Parliament in Parliament tomorrow, and we know that the ANC has more than that, then the proceedings can carry on. And it's not a question of expecting everybody to be there and voting. It's who comes and who casts a vote. You heard Mr. George saying the votes cast is what counts. So I think they're just embarking on protest politics in order to draw attention to themselves at the MK party, rather than doing anything that is going to advance their cause in any positive sort of way, other than creating conversations like the one you and I are having at the moment.
And just as we, wrap our conversation, Advocate, I just want to, get your sense in terms of how far we have come as a country up to this point. I mean, a lot of the time we heard and we understood this election as having been said that, it is bringing about a drastic change, but essentially it talks about democracy being alive. It also speaks of the people, having spoken this to be what it is. But do you get a sense that, of course, the Constitution has been tested too during this process, particularly, given what the sentiments that we've been hearing, particularly by political parties?
Yes, I think that the Constitution is coming through the process very well, in this sense that the ANC has accepted that it lost its majority. It has not created any constitutional crisis around that loss, and it deserves to be congratulated for adopting what is essentially a constitutionalist posture in relation to the results. That is very important for the future of democracy in South Africa. We set out in 1994 to make our constitution the supreme law of the land and to create a multi-party system of governance under the rule of law, in which openness, accountability, and responsiveness to the needs of ordinary people meant to be the order of the day. We lost our way along the way in the last 30 years. There's been a lot of attention paid to unfolding the National Democratic Revolution, which is the program of the ANC and its alliance partners. And that has failed in the sense that the majority of the voters are not prepared to continue with that particular program. And what the ANC has fallen back on is the idea of putting the Constitution front and center in the next parliament, which means that the delivery, the state's obligation to respect, protect, promote and fulfill the human rights of everybody in South Africa will be given greater precedence. The rule of law will be accorded its correct position. And as President Mandela put it last Thursday in his late night announcement, he wants to end corruption. And that resolve is going to be tested very soon, because the DA has promised us, as the voters of South Africa, that it will place a bill, two bills in fact, before Parliament for the purpose of establishing a new Chapter 9 institution that is created to prevent, combat, investigate and prosecute serious corruption and organized crime in South Africa. So if that bill is passed by the new Parliament, you will know that everybody is serious about upholding the rule of law, because that bill is based on a decision of the Constitutional Court in the Glenister litigation back in 2011, a decision that has never been properly implemented while the ANC had a majority, but which should, if President Ramaphosa was serious when he said that part of the work of the 7th Parliament will be to end corruption, then it should be an easy victory for the government of national unity, and a very much needed and overdue reform to the criminal justice administration.
Do you get a sense then?
Big issue.
Do you get the sense then, Advocate, just given the fact that, should this government of national unity go ahead, some actually don't believe it is a government of national unity, calling it rather just a mere party coalition government framework, so to speak. But do you then think that this also just gives an opportunity for South Africans to be able to hold those in power accountable, given this particular framework? So in other words, there is very little to fear in the sense in that we should all be, comforted in a way that a lot of parties will then be able to look at, how going forward this country potentially can grow.
Yes, I think accountability will come into its own because we are emerging from a dominant party state, which was the last 30 years of ANC majority, into a situation where, whether you call it a government of national unity or a coalition, and I take your point, I think you're quite right to be a little cautious about giving a grand name to something that is just an agreement between some political parties, but not all of them, that's for sure. Then we are going to get into a situation where parliamentarians will hold each other and the executive to account in a way that we have not seen hitherto in the first 30 years of our democracy. And that has to be a good thing for the people of South Africa. Far too much of what has happened has been politics of the stomach rather than politics that serve the people.
Advocate Hoffman, thank you so much for your time. Really do appreciate it. Advocate Paul Hoffman, Director and Project Lead at Accountability Now.